Abandoned by Disney. Abandoned by Disney is a series of creepypastas based on the mysterious closings of some of Disney's resorts in the Bahamas and in the USA. The creepypasta was made by a famous horror influencer named Slime Beast, who did several other creepypastas like I Hate You and Lost Episodes. The creepypasta goes that sometime in the early 2000s, Disney allegedly spent $30 million on a resort in the Bahamas named Treasure Island, which they then mysteriously abandoned without a convincing reason. After that, another Disney resort was abandoned on the beaches of North Carolina, and it was supposed to be a jungle-themed resort by the name of Mowgli's Palace. According to the author, the project was extremely controversial from the start, but it still opened and grabbed lots of tourists until it disturbingly closed without any logical reason. The author of the story then alleges that he went to the resort to see what he could find. But that is when the creepypasta gets pretty disturbing. Based on the story, the resort had been stripped bare, and anything that was large enough to be taken had been stolen, leaving only some desks. Disney had also released its exotic animals into the wild, which included some sharks and an extremely long python that the author said he encountered. Disturbingly, the user also said that some of the walls and statues had been painted with the words, "Abandoned by Disney." Obviously, every single detail from the story is fake, but the creepypasta was about a real island in a real resort in the late 90s named Discovery Island, which was very popular because of the different exotic animals that it had. Disturbingly, the resort got fined for animal cruelty after the company admitted that a few vultures had been killed after being captured by the staff. For mysterious reasons, the attraction was closed down with no logical explanation. Since its closing, the place was left to rot and the building sustained major hurricane damage. Nowadays, the place is closed for the public, but that hadn't stopped a few urban explorers from checking out the place. One of those explorers was Shane, who swam through the alligator-infested waters to reach the island. He wanted to go there so that he could find out about the place, but suddenly, things began to be pretty disturbing. When he and his friends arrived, they found that some of the lights were open and that there was snake stunt and some Coke bottles in some of the sheds. Although they were only able to explore half the island, they made a Reddit post about their entire adventure, which was featured on the news. This upset Disney, and they banned Shane and his friends from coming to Disney ever again. This creepypasta sparked for Disney fans the feeling that Disneyland isn't always a place of happiness and joy, and that some of the higher-ups have secrets they don't want you to know. The year was 1991. In April of 2015, a Reddit user with the mysterious name I'm Sorry Michael posted a disturbing story on the No Sleep subreddit about his first-hand experience in witnessing a 4-year-old get kidnapped in a school playground near him. The post was titled, "The Year Was 1991." And in it, he says that he arrived on a school sports field to toss around a ball with his friends. As soon as he arrived, he allegedly saw a kid with a blue jacket running around the playground. Suddenly, a suspicious-looking dark van parked on top of a hopscotch outline. A few seconds later, a man in a weird-looking low-quality bear costume got out of the van and offered the boy some candy. There that he took the child and put him in the back of his van before driving away. Based on the post, the author allegedly drove after the van but got lost due to him not knowing the place well. He then tried calling 911, but the policeman scolded him for prank calling. The next day, the author supposedly saw on the news that a 4-year-old boy named Michael Dunahee had disappeared from a school playground the day before. Actually, a lot of this story is true. The real story goes that on March 24th, Crisul Dunahee Michael's mother was going to participate in a women's flag football practice at Land's Heart Elementary School in British Columbia. As soon as they arrived, Michael said that he wanted to wait at the playground by himself. The mum felt that something wasn't right, but she let her son do as he pleases, on the condition that he had to stay there until his dad comes back to take him. But by the time the dad had arrived, Michael was gone. A search was then launched and Michael was declared missing. But despite the massive search effort, the boy wasn't found. Strangely, although there were dozens of people in the playground, there were no witnesses. The only thing that the police could get was that a man in his late 40s was seen on the time of the kidnappings. Sadly, because the kid went missing over 35 years ago, it is unlikely that the boy will be found. Cropsey. Cropsey is an urban legend about a serial kidnapper named Cropsey who lost his son and resorted to stealing other people's children to deal with his grief. According to the story, Cropsey had a hook for a hand, and there were scars and wounds that covered his entire body. Although the story has some unreal elements like the hook and scars, there were lots of children being reported missing in the 70s, and that was also the time when the line between reality and legend disappeared, and the story of the real Cropsey began replacing the legend. This is the real story. Andre Rand was a man from Manhattan who was born in 1944. After working for 2 years at the infamously brutal Willowbrook State School for children with disabilities, Rand was arrested in 1969 and served over a year in prison for the attempted attack of a 9-year-old girl. As soon as he was released, reports began spreading that more little girls had went missing all over Staten Island, including 5-year-old Alice Pereira, who was playing in her building lobby when she suddenly disappeared without any clues on where she might have gone. Over the next decade, Rand was the prime suspect in the disappearances and deaths of several other young girls in the area. But it wasn't until 1983 when he picked up 11 kids from a local YMCA and took them to the airport, where he was finally arrested and sentenced to 10 months in prison once more. Throughout the 70s and 80s, several other children went missing in Staten Island, and although Rand was always the prime suspect, there wasn't enough evidence to put him in jail for a long time. For many years, Rand would be seen hanging out with kids, walking with them, and even bringing them lunch from local restaurants. And finally, in 1987, after the police had let this man roam free for a very long time, they would finally arrest him, after finding undeniable evidence that Rand had been behind the disappearance and murder of Jennifer Schweier, a 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome. In 1988, he was finally sentenced to 25 years in prison, and while he was behind bars, several other evidence began piling up that tied Rand to several other disappearances, which led him to stay an additional 13 years in prison till 2037. The Maine Hermit. The Canonback Valley is one of the most beautiful regions in Maine, with over 5,000 square miles of forests, rolling hills, and natural paradises that surrounded the river. Many cabin owners describe the river as one of the most peaceful places ever, but it wasn't always that way. Throughout the early 80s to the early 2000s, there were reports of over 1,000 break-ins in the North Pond cabins, and for decades no one knew who did it, since they were always carried out when no one was home. But soon the cabin owners began finding a pattern, as it seemed that the cabin break-in always peaking in the days before Memorial Day and after Labor Day. And the stolen items themselves ranged from food to cooking utensils, toiletries of all kinds. In the absence of a concrete suspect, the locals began calling the thief the North Pond Hermit, even though at this point there was no evidence to show that the break-ins were being done by a single person. After the consistent breakings from the hermit, the tale began spreading, even turning into legends. which people would share on campfires. And until that time, no one expected for the hermit to be found until 2013, when a man named Christopher Thomas Knight was arrested in the middle of the woods in the North Pond area by an officer who made it his sole mission to find the hermit. The officers then took him into custody and asked him why he wasn't answering any of their questions, when he eventually responded, saying that he was ashamed of himself. As it turned out, the man was living in the middle of the woods by himself in an unheated night tent, surviving only on the things that he had stolen from the nearby cabins. Surprisingly, he had survived winter temperatures of under -20 degrees and hadn't went to the doctor or taken any medicine for over 3 decades, understandably. Chris had lost track of time, and when he was asked how long he had stayed in the woods, he responded by saying since the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown, which took place in 1986. As they later found out, he started his isolation at the age of 20 and had taken extreme lengths to keep his privacy, only moving at night and having no type of communication with society. Interestingly, as the cops dug deeper into his story, his only real possession were his glasses. The rest of his belongings were stolen. After this, Chiz was sentenced to 7 months in prison, after which he disappeared once more. And according to the cops, he is now living a quiet and peaceful life in rural Maine.